Hi, welcome. So this is my first video lecture. I do want to do more of this video stuff. So thank you for bearing with me. Of course, there's a transcript available on our class website. So for those of you who don't want to listen, of course. So when I teach sociology in face-to-face classes, I draw from my own personal experience and educational insights to come up with class themes to help understand the social world better. These are: our thoughts are not our own, capitalism is an undercurrent in American society, reality is a social construct, and language is used as a means to deceive and coerce. When we think of our actions within a society, there are numerous social forces that encourage us to think the way that we do. These are cultural values instilled on us by the original social influencers, aka, in sociological parlance, agents of socialization. These are things like family, religion, mass media, and peer groups. I would argue that with the advent of social media and more of our lives being digitally intermediated, that ideas in our friend groups and a deviation of mass media in the form of user-created social media, with what sociologists call prosumption, have dramatically altered widespread values in our society. Prosumption is user-created media that is both created and consumed by users. Hence, the meme, a simple image with simple text, can be more prolific and influential than a long-winded paper about God knows what. With the ability to be constantly stimulated by our digital devices and social media outlets like Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, our attention spans have shifted to be more staccato-like. I know at least mine has. Often, the companies that provide these platforms can use advanced data collecting techniques to look for patterns in interaction, and from these patterns, guise ways to keep us engaged with their product. For instance, in 2012, there exists a seminal article about big data and predictive analytics titled "How Companies Learn Your Secrets" by Charles Duhigg, whose central claim is that Target Corporation can pinpoint from a few purchases whether a woman is pregnant, and from this data extrapolate her information from other sources to pinpoint and target her with directed advertising. This engagement has tremendous business value, as it is something needed in a competitive business market where often attention and money earned is a zero-sum situation. This means there's a valuable resource and a clear winner and loser. On the idea that our thoughts are not our own, consider the following. How would you go about your daily life if you lived in the same spot 200 years ago? Certainly, external forces would have influenced your life. How you ate, how you slept, your views on weapons, the universe, and social interaction would have been dramatically different. Of course, when it came to education, if you were fortunate to have learned to read, as widespread education in Western society wasn't an investment our country had made, if you were to be educated and your family was fortunate to be able to provide a private tutor, then cool. More than likely, you would have been trained in education by the Bible, and with it espoused more of the latent cultural beliefs and value system instilled in its literature. Moreover, if you look at the nature of education and its transmission, a lot of the value systems that you personally have are a result of the hidden curriculum you have learned in your interactions in school settings, like how to treat people and get along. This, by and large, is a result of widespread investment in education our country has made. And because of the First Amendment, a separation of church and state, the education most of us has received is largely secular, meaning non-religious. And as an effect, it can be argued from a functional perspective that the decline of religiosity among the current generation manifests from secular values being taught in school. At this stage in history, our society is a capitalist society, where our economic system is market-based. While the study of economics details market conditions, these market conditions affect the socio-structural forces of environments, encouraging certain social conditions. For instance, when we look at the history of Los Angeles, we learn about the various train systems that were dismantled in the 1950s to give way to bus systems. By and large, this change in transportation was largely credited to General Motors Corporation lobbying city council members for a mode of a personalized transportation. It didn't hurt the company's bottom line, their overall profit loss statements, that they also sold the buses to the newly established bus lines. This coincided with massive infrastructure investment in roads and transportation in this era. This mode of transportation changed the way that Americans interacted with one another and helped the manufacturing economy develop. Hence, when we hear the tales of the good wages that auto workers had, it is in effect connected to GM's lobbying efforts to change the nature of public transportation. However, this nature of looking at the capitalist nature of our economy helps us understand the business motives in our interactions with companies and each other. In this day and age, I go as far as to argue that online businesses and companies create frameworks and interactions online, and that as a result of our interactions to these frameworks, newfound ways of interaction and meaning result, creating new ways to socially interact with one another. Hence, new ideas like Snapchatting. These frameworks, of course, vary over time as a result of other forces influencing the social sphere. For example, it was advertised in the 1950s that more doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette, intimating that the connection between doctors and smoking would equate to healthiness. Here's an example of an advertisement. Of course, in reaction to new regulations on what cigarette companies could say and wanting to appeal to a new market, cigarette companies restructured their marketing campaigns to promote a different, cooler image. This is Joe Camel. Super cool, right? Notice the cartoons and the colors. Who is it meant to appeal to, right? Hence, we can look at the trajectory of cigarette advertising campaigns from the 1950s to now. On the third theme, that reality is a social construct. Think of the premise that the moon is going to crash into the earth in 3 days. The patterns and ways in which we would interact would change. Think about your routines. Would you still go to work? Would you still spend an hour of grooming yourself? Would you even brush your teeth? Surely the same social order would exist, right? The nature of our reality exists in the patterns and meanings in which we interact. When it comes to social interaction, the symbolic interactionist perspective argues that we give meaning to the symbols in which we interact, and from these symbols we interpret our own meanings. For example, the use of language is composed of symbols, and from our interaction with language, we can create a shared meaning. For a fourth and final theme, our communication isn't just made up of verbal language, as in the social world. We also communicate via body language. For example, it is possible for a message to be conveyed if the words don't describe the action. For instance, in my generation, something as bad meant cool, like, oh, that new video game is bad. Yet in today's generation, something cool is lit. Okay, I'll slow down a bit regarding this. The main idea is that the meanings of words change over time, and the meaning of our social interactions is often co-opted by businesses and people pursuing their own interests to appeal to people to sell themselves and their products. Hence, think of how big business uses language. When it comes to licensing agreements that you have to sign to use their websites, often these contracts will use vacuous terms that have multiple meanings. When you get into the nitty-gritty of what these companies are about, it is often hidden. For example, think about how Coca-Cola reassures their investors about dwindling water supplies and obesity epidemics. Do you think they will try to spin it? Meaning, do you think they will try to highlight other factors? Then, think about the kind of language that these companies will use to get you to appeal to buy their products. Often this language is carefully scripted and interactions are encouraged to be pleasant.